Welcome to this afternoon's session. I am so pleased to have Wendy Perron with us today. Wendy is an educational consultant with the New Hampshire Department of Education, and she is the former director of English Learning Instruction for the Manchester School District. Wendy's interest in working with culturally and linguistically diverse families began almost 20 years ago when she accepted a work-study position teaching English to newcomer, immigrant, and refugee families. Wendy's worked as a paraprofessional, a teacher, an instructional coach, an adjunct instructor, and an administrator. And she's here today to talk about how we can promote equity in education for culturally and linguistically diverse students. So Wendy, we're thrilled to have you with us today, and let's jump right in.
Thank you.
So, question for you. As the situation with school closures, remote learning, and the overall response to COVID-19 evolves so quickly, what are some of the major impacts for English learners and their families?
So I think language continues to be this central barrier for our English learners and their families. First, it's important that schools make it possible for students and families to access information related to health and social and financial supports, as well, of course, as academic programming. And they make that available in a language that parents can understand. Districts and schools should keep the messaging consistent so families know where they can go to find important updates and who they can call if they have a question or a need. And some school districts have even designated homeschool liaisons. And for other districts, this work may fall on social workers, guidance counselors, or EL teachers. But schools should share clear procedures with those educators so they know how to easily access interpretation and translation, because I think that's one of the major barriers for students, and how they can communicate effectively with parents who have limited English proficiency. I would also strongly encourage districts and schools to look for ways that they can partner with culturally and linguistically diverse families throughout this time of uncertainty. And to use the expertise of EL educators in their building and those family liaisons and community partners who work closely with these student populations, because they know their students well and can provide a bridge during this time of uncertainty. And schools can also, those people can also help schools learn more about the unique challenges facing our multilingual, multicultural families, which could then inform any future adjustments that might need to be made to the remote learning plan if this does continue throughout the summer and fall.
Thanks. I have another question, and it's really more related to the students now. So overall, what do you think the remote learning experience is for English learners?
Our statewide group of EL educators has been meeting regularly, once weekly actually, and the reports around the state vary almost as much as the population of English learners we serve. But I think the challenge is more steep for our newcomer students who have very limited English proficiency, and for even more so for the subpopulation of newcomers who have come to New Hampshire with limited or interrupted formal education. However, New Hampshire educators have responded quickly and are collaborating more than ever now with classroom and academic content teachers to support those students. And our statewide group has talked a lot about finding the appropriate balance between synchronous and asynchronous instruction. And we think it's important that students have access to both, because the opportunity to collaborate and stay connected with peers is such an important part of the learning process, and also the acculturation process for English learners. But students with less English proficiency will need support during asynchronous instruction that allows them the time they need to process and respond with language when they're ready. And many students report through their teachers that synchronous instruction is just more engaging. And after all, learning is a social practice, so I think it's been nice to stay connected and maximizing engagement with the content teachers, so that to maximize engagement, content teachers should consider the English language development level of each EL student they serve to make sure that the content is comprehensible. And teachers can do this with pacing or chunking sections of academic content, by adding visual supports, examples and models, both physical and language models too, like graphic organizers. And teachers should also align their expectations for language output of their English learners to make sure it matches the student's current English language development level. So for example, a high school newcomer in the beginning phase of English development comes to class with decades of experience in schooling, so can certainly understand grade level content, but the way the student demonstrates understanding of that content may vary. So the student may produce several sentences versus an essay, just making sure we adjust our expectations. And when possible, including texts and assignments that use multicultural perspectives to help engage those students in a way to sustain their cultural identities in teaching and learning. But the best resource our teachers have is each other. It's important that the classroom and content teachers reach out to support students and one another.
So you've used the word support a lot, and we know as parents that we as parents really are here to support our children. So how can schools and teachers support parents to help the students? Now, the parents are probably also don't have English as their first language. So it might be a learning language, it might be a second or a third language. So what's your suggestion for schools working with parents during this time?
Yeah, I love that you pointed that out. I mean, first of all, we have to make sure we're offering communication with parents in a language they can understand. There are many tools for doing this. That some of them are embedded in many of the popular platforms being used in New Hampshire, Google Classroom, and other apps like Talking Point and Remind. But more importantly, not all families may be able to follow the strict timelines and due dates. So I think it's important to remain flexible and really consistent in messaging to parents, helpful to provide students with weekly schedules in advance at the beginning of the week. So students who may have to share a device can plan ahead. In this month, our Muslim students in New Hampshire have been observing Ramadan, a very holy month, which includes fasting for some of our older students. So certainly we want to be flexible with timelines and expectations that are sensitive to the needs of all of our students. And teachers, I've heard of some really interesting projects, and teachers are creating videos, how-to videos for parents, for students and parents, to demonstrate how to use some of the systems we expect them to access, not only for academic content, but also for communication. And I think that's been very helpful. And even with all the options for borrowing devices and access to free internet, there are still families that may need low tech or even no tech options. So districts and schools really need to keep track of who is active in the online remote learning community and who may need another option. And then finally, just keeping in mind that some students and families may not feel comfortable appearing on video or speaking in the camera because maybe they're worried about their oral English skills, and just be ready to adjust expectations to, again, meet the unique needs of each family and student.
I love your example about Ramadan, and I love it particularly because I lived and I worked in the Middle East for a while, and during Ramadan, we often don't realize that students, especially older students, are not eating during the day. They don't eat until sunset. And it makes it very difficult for them to focus on their work and to pay attention and to be attentive because they're focusing on something else. So I thought that was a really good example about cultural awareness, how it's impacted also by language. So just wanted to say, wow, what a great example. So Wendy, we have one more question for you today, and it's really a legal question. So we know there are laws, and what laws do educators need to be made aware of that really outline the rights of our culturally and linguistically diverse students?
Actually, the U.S. Department of Ed sent out specific guidance on this Monday, May 18th, about providing services to English learners during the COVID-19 outbreak. And I mean, the rules are as you would expect. If a district is providing remote learning for its students, then it must also provide language instruction services to English learners. So in that guidance, the department recommends teachers continue to provide, to the extent possible, the same model and support level to students. So if students were previously in self-contained EL classrooms or in pull-out models, those EL teachers would still be offering direct English instruction for those students. And for classes in which ELs participated, maybe in mainstream content classrooms, the guidance really suggests, and we know this by best practice, that the teacher, the content teacher and the EL teacher really collaborate to support that student. And then also, and this kind of is a theme, it appears for today, on March 16th, the U.S. Department of Ed released a fact sheet entitled Addressing the Risks of COVID-19 in Schools While Protecting the Civil Rights of Students, which essentially reminded schools of their obligation to provide effective communication and language assistance to families with limited English proficiency. So when school officials provide information to any student or parent about any aspect of the coronavirus or actions and resources associated with it, they generally need to provide meaningful access to such information in a language all families can understand.
Unmute myself there. That was really a really comprehensive answer about the legality and all of our responsibilities to work with students, diverse students. So Wendy, before we close for today, and any final thoughts that you would like to share with the viewers and the listeners today?
I'm just really grateful for the extraordinary efforts of our teachers in meeting the challenges of remote learning, particularly with English learners, where the barriers can be a little bit higher. I think people have been very creative and come together in collaborative ways to solve the challenges to ensure students are participating, not only accessing, but accessing and engagement. So I appreciate it, and I think if this continues into the fall or future, we're really poised to make sure it's a positive experience for our students.
So again, our thanks to Wendy Perron, an educational consultant with the New Hampshire Department of Education. Thank you, Wendy. Thank you to our listeners and viewers, and looking forward to talking to you all again soon.
Thank you.